Yeah, good evening, everyone. My name's Matt Jonhson. I'm from AWS, the public sector team, and solutions architect there. And I'm going to talk a little bit about using AWS for public sector workloads. But before I do, just a quick show of hands. How many people here are from the public sector? Excellent, a small smattering. How many people are from commercial organizations that either sell into the public sector or work with public sector organizations? A lot more of you. And how many of you are from regulated industries or industries where you have particular controls? Excellent. Anyone not fall into those categories? Right, I would try and make it as interesting as possible anyway. But what we're going to talk about today, really, we're going to look at some examples of the public sector use of AWS Cloud. I'm going to talk a bit about security at AWS, in particular the shared responsibility model. A little bit more around compliance. It's often an overlooked aspect, but there's some really important and useful tools we have available. How we actually run public sector workloads on AWS, and a little bit about Quick Starts, which is a sort of complementary technology to the marketplace that Erica was talking about. And then some summaries. But first, obviously, UK region. So I think you missed the announcement of this by 1 week from the previous user group last month, in December, when Ian Massingham was talking about the reInvent recap. So we launched mid-December. It's now the third region we have in Europe, complementing Dublin and Frankfurt. And it's the 16th region we've launched globally. And there's another one coming in Europe as well, which is in Paris. Anyone used it yet? Anyone deployed into London yet? A few. Okay, cool. Right, examples of public sector use of public cloud. So just setting a bit of context, Government Digital Service was set up back in 2010, I think it was, with an aim of transforming the way government does business. And I think they've made some statements over the years that have really sort of helped drive the take-up of public cloud for the public sector. One of their statements is it's possible for public sector organizations to safely put highly personal and sensitive data into the public cloud. So this was an announcement that came out, I believe, last week. It's quite a sort of a big statement, and it's very, very handy for sort of customers who are wondering whether it's safe to use the public cloud. And the reason they say this is because cloud providers have a very significant budget to maintain, patch, and secure their cloud infrastructure. So in many cases, the public cloud can mitigate many common risks that you would normally see in your on-premises environments. As an example, we already have a number of public sector customers running workloads in AWS, Ministry of Justice, the Met Office, UCAS, Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency are just some of them. For people who know the public sector, the G cloud security approach, we used to have something called impact levels and a protected marking scheme that went from 7 levels. It started at IL0, which was basically public information, anyone can use it, doesn't really matter, all the way through to IL6, which was top secret, and then a range of sort of markings in between. Recently that's changed, or in fact 2014, it was announced that they were aiming to change that, and in future there is going to be 3 tiers, and I'll talk a little bit more about those tiers later on, but effectively, official is the classification that now covers the vast majority, so around 90% of public sector workloads. And that the way to assess whether the security controls were appropriate would be something called the cloud security principles. And I'll talk a little bit more about those as well, because this is really important, not just for public sector customers, but for anyone looking at how to use cloud securely. So, the cloud security principles were originally developed by CESG, which is effectively the public-facing arm of GCHQ, and recently have transitioned into something called the National Cyber Security Centre, NCSC, who are sort of responsible for helping commercial and public sector organisations in the UK secure their IT environments. There are 14 principles within the cloud security principles, and they cover the sort of areas you would expect. So things like how you protect data in transit, how you look after the assets, how you ensure separation between users on a platform, what sort of governance framework you have in place to manage those environments, the operational security, so how we actually run and evaluate those services, the personnel who operate those services, making sure that any development, new products or features is done in a secure, accessible, auditable manner. How we ensure the security of the supply chain, how you actually do secure user management, identity and authentication across all of the above, interface protection, so external parties, so things like ingress and egress routes, how you do administration of the service, so patching the underlying hypervisors and so on, audit information and secure use of the service. So that last one is really important, it's how you use the service. So you can do all the other 13 great, but if you then expose your service to the world without protecting them properly, then it's a problem. To help with this, we've published something. We've published a guide to implementing AWS controls that align with the cloud security principles. That's a white paper, it's on there. If anyone's interested in getting that and you don't want to copy that slide down, let me know, I'll send you a link after this. But what's really important is something that we call the shared responsibility model. Just a quick show of hands, how many people have heard of the AWS shared responsibility model? Excellent. Okay, for those who haven't, it's effectively trying to define where the responsibility boundaries are between the cloud provider and yourselves as the customer. So what we say is that one of the easy ways to think about it is that we're responsible for security of the cloud and the customer is responsible for security in the cloud. Breaking that down, what that means is we look after our global infrastructure. We have regions, we have availability zones, we have edge locations. Within those, we have things like networking, compute, storage, database services. We're responsible for those. We patch the hypervisors, we look after the security of the network, which aligns with a number of the cloud security principles you saw earlier on. But on top of that, you need to be responsible for security in the cloud. So things like how you manage your customer data, how you patch and run your operating systems, how you do things like tune your network and firewall configurations, how you choose to encrypt data, whether that's in transit or at rest. We provide a number of tools to help you with that. Third parties provide some tools as well. There are services such as Bitnami that allow you to produce OS service or run applications that have been pre-configured using best practices. But ultimately, you make those decisions. It's the customer responsibility. What does this mean? Well, you get some immediate security benefits from using AWS. We help you keep your data safe. We put a very high degree of emphasis on controls that will help you ensure not just that the AWS capabilities and facilities we have are secure, but that you have a range of tools to help secure those in the cloud. Whether that's encryption at rest using our key management service, whether it's things like CloudTrail to monitor tracking and monitor API calls and so on, we have those tools there. We also help you meet your compliance requirements, and I'll touch on this a little bit more later. But effectively, we do a lot of the heavy lifting around meeting some of the standards on things like PCI DSS, ISO 27001, the SOC reports, and so on. And these can help you demonstrate that your applications are running in a secure, reliable manner. And lastly, and this is probably one of the key ones, security scales with you. So when you scale out, if you've configured AWS to use things like auto-scaling groups, as you scale out, those servers will inherit the security controls that you've defined within your launch configurations and so on. So it helps you scale things quickly without having to worry too much about adding security controls around those individual services. You've built security into that scale. So just coming back to the shared responsibility model, security of the cloud. So this is our responsibility. And what we do here to help demonstrate that is we have a whole range of security measures that we implement and operate. And the way we demonstrate that to yourselves, because we don't allow customers to come in and look at our data centers, we don't even tell people where those facilities are, we maintain security standards and we effectively demonstrate those from our certifications and our attestations. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that means in a second. But for security in the cloud, these are measures that the customer has control over to implement and operate. So you can use your certification and attestations to sort of demonstrate alignment with those principles, but we also have frameworks that help to provide best practice around how you can configure your services to meet particular frameworks, such as the cloud security principles. So, compliance. Certification attestations are effectively assessed by a third party. So an independent third party auditor will come in, assess against a range of criteria to make sure that the AWS security controls or our processes, whatever is being audited, meet what we say they are, what we'll do. And that results in either a certification like ISO 27001 or 27017, an audit report such as the SOC reports, or an attestation of compliance. Compliance alignments and frameworks are a little bit different. So these are published security or compliance requirements for specific purposes, such as a specific industry, a specific vertical. So for for government, G-Clouds mandate that services should sort of align with cloud security principles. And finally, we provide a range of different functionality and services and enablers to help with those alignments to frameworks. So things like quick starts, things like marketplace pre-configured images, playbooks, white papers, best practices, mapping documents, and so on. So there's a range of tools to help with that. To summarize for the UK, some of the key certifications to call out here: ISO 27001, which is security management; 27017, which is cloud-specific security controls; 27018, which is how you manage personal data in the cloud; SOC, which pretty much covers a range of different ways of how we manage and securely run the facilities and the services; Cyber Essentials Plus, which is the UK recommended way of demonstrating those capabilities; and obviously PCI DSS, so the standards for if you want to process credit card data in the cloud. These reports are available but to customers to demonstrate that we have those controls in place, and you can use those to meet your own requirements or to meet the requirements that are put on you by industry or other regulatory bodies. Some key frameworks in the public sector, so I've touched on these already, and you'll hear them several times, the cloud security principles. We also reference the Center for Internet Security that effectively provide some prescriptive mappings about how you can help configure your infrastructure following best practice. And we're also part of the G-Cloud framework, so this is more of a procurement vehicle, but what it does enable us to do is sort of provide some standard terms and conditions that allows public sector organizations to buy quickly and easily. And these frameworks can be used by customers to demonstrate how their services built on top of AWS can be aligned against whatever criteria that they are required to do. So the compliance reports, one of the things we launched at reInvent, or around reInvent time, was something called AWS Artifact. So this is available in the console, and what it enables you to do now is request access to some of our reports that previously were only available under NDA. So things like our ISO 27001 or things like the SOC audit reports, you can now request and get access to. So this is great if you need to demonstrate those to your information assurance assessors and so on. Okay, that's probably enough on compliance. Official workloads on AWS. So I mentioned I'd sort of describe what official was. Official is the majority of information that's used and processed by the public sector. It includes routine business operations services, some of which could have damaging consequences if the information was leaked. And it also includes private data and personal data. Contrast that to the other two classifications within government, secret and top secret. These are effectively information that is very, very sensitive to the economic or security well-being of the United Kingdom. So there's very typically a vast gulf between how you handle official information and how you handle secret and top secret information. And there's a link there if you're interested in understanding more about how the classification scheme works. But the guidance is that, again, the well-executed use of public cloud will be appropriate for the vast majority of government information. And you should understand how responsibility for security is shared between you and the cloud provider. So again, the guidance from UK government is the shared responsibility model is key. You need to understand what the cloud provider can do for you, but more importantly, what you need to do on top of that. And there's also some guidance for how you choose and implement services on the cloud. So know your business requirements. It seems fairly obvious, but you really need to understand what you're looking to do within the cloud. Understand the types of information you have. Understand the levels of classification it has. Understand things like how much data you're going to hold, who needs access to it, and so on. Determine which of the 14 security principles will apply to that. Some may apply, all may apply. Very rarely that none applies. Understand how they're going to be implemented. Do you need to do encryption at rest? Do you need to do encryption at transit? Make the appropriate selections based on the information requirements. Understand the level of assurance offered. So what levels do we need to be able to assure against? Identify any mitigations that need to be made for particularly sensitive data or for particularly unusual workloads. Consider any residual risks that are left after that and decide with your security teams and with your the risk owners if they're happy to proceed with that. And then continue to manage and monitor risks. And these are we provide tools such as CloudTrail and Config that allow you to help understand the configuration and the usage of your platform within AWS. So to help customers with that, within the public sector, what we released last week was something called the UK official AWS Quick Start. So this is a sample cloud architecture that's been designed to support and demonstrate how it complies with NCSE, cloud security principles, and some of the CIS critical internet controls. And what it is, it's a CloudFormation template, so much like Bitnami, produce a multi-tier stack from within the CloudFormation. This produces a sample multi-tier Linux web application. It's not Bitnami. There's no reason it couldn't be. What we encourage people to do is a demo, so we encourage you to swap it out with the applications of your choice, but it demonstrates how the service could be built. It also introduces additional controls, such as CloudWatch alarms, which will monitor for things like security group changes and so on. And what we have, in addition, is something called a security controls matrix, which demonstrates how the controls that AWS offer and how we've implemented them as part of the Quick Start align to the cloud security principles and the critical security controls. Okay. So I couldn't go the entire presentation without a Visio. So this is effectively what's deployed. It's a pretty straightforward multi-tier application with a separate management VPC. And that effectively is deployed as a notional environment, but you could easily expand that to then add additional development test environments and so on. And within there, we have a range of controls such as network ACLs to ensure that subnets are separated, security group separation, security SSL certs on load balancers, and so on. And you've already seen CloudFormation, so this is effectively the outputs of the CloudFormation stack when you would deploy it. What it does, the Quick Start helps us with the NCSE guidance. So it provides all the supports and information for 4 steps, really, of those 8-step plan. So determine the relevant security principles. Our security controls matrix lists the cloud security principles that are relevant to this Quick Start. So that was step 3. Step 4 was understand how they're implemented. So we cross-reference what we've deployed in the CloudFormation template against the requirements from those cloud security principles. We then understand the levels of assurance, so we link that back to things like our compliance reports. And then we identify any additional mitigations that might be in place, so things like the CloudWatch alarms. And that looks a bit like this. So it's an Excel spreadsheet that you download as part of this pack. And effectively, on the left-hand side, it lists one of the cloud security principles, gives a brief description of what it is, shows whether or not it's mapped within the CloudFormation template and the Quick Start, whose implementation responsibility is. So this is quite an interesting one. So data center security is AWS's responsibility. We don't let you access the data center. You don't have any control over the security of that data center, so we do. It's not referenced in the Quick Start, but it is referenced by additional services such as our risk and compliance white paper or our SOC reports. So when your auditors ask how do you demonstrate that the data center, your infrastructure, or your services in is secure, you can point them at this, and it will reference the relevant reports that demonstrate that. Alternatively, things like data at rest protection. Here we show that actually it's a shared responsibility. We provide the tooling to do that. We have all our facilities are secure in terms of handling that data, but you choose how to encrypt it. So in that case, you basically have a shared responsibility for implementation. And in this case, the CloudFormation script does demonstrate how that's done. We actually also demonstrate which resources are deployed within that, and also some additional reading if you need to understand that further. At this point, it's useful to point out what the UK official Quick Start isn't. So it's not a magic bullet that means you deploy this and you'll automatically be completely compliant for deploying public sector workloads. It's not meant to be that. The customer is still responsible for the risk assessment, still owns the risk. This is a key point within the public sector over the last couple of years. As you deploy the application, you're responsible for that risk. And remember the shared responsibility model. It's not also the only way to do it. So this is an architectural pattern that we've come up with. We're working with government customers who are doing it in a different way. The key thing is that they're using the same sort of mappings, they're understanding that shared responsibility model, and they're also making sure that what they do is secure and aligns with the relevant best practices. Okay. So a little bit more about AWS Quick Start. So I've talked a fair amount about the UK official. Actually, we have quite a lot of them. So to give you some idea, they're built by AWS solution architects. We have a dedicated team for doing this. We also pulling vertical specialists, such as the public sector team. But it's also worth pointing out that we work with partners on these as well. They help you deploy popular solutions on AWS, and they're based on our best practices. So again, we're looking to make sure that you use things like config where it's available, use things like CloudWatch, CloudTrail, and so on. And it covers a wide range of topics, so from DevOps, security compliance, database and storage, big data and analytics, Microsoft, SAP, and so on. And as an example, so under the DevOps section, you can deploy a quick start that will deploy a PowerShell desire state configuration, an Ansible Tower, Red Hat OpenShift. You can deploy HashiCorp Vault, Atlassian Jira Service Desk Data Center, a range of them there. For Microsoft and SAP, we can deploy things through the quick start, things like a SharePoint infrastructure, a SQL infrastructure, an entire Windows application stack. So the Microsoft servers on the left pretty much deploys in an entire sort of Microsoft Business Suite on there. Also things like SAP HANA, SAP Business One, and also some more common design patterns like just how you deploy a remote desktop gateway or an set of AD services. And we also have a range around security and compliance. So UK official falls under that, but we have quick start architectures for PCI DSS, NIST high impact. So by high impact, we mean where there's particularly sensitive data that you need additional controls in, and a vendor-led one, Trend Micro, deep security. And something you may not have known is that you can we provide some tooling on GitHub to help you build your own quick start. So this is effectively a set of guides that allow you to follow through a set of steps to help go through how to build a quick start. And if you haven't checked that out before, I really suggest you go and have a look at it, even if you're not intending to build a quick start, because there's lots and lots of good practice in there around building out a CloudFormation template, particularly where reference is designed for multiple regions or pulls in services from different vendors and so on. So have a look on that link, have a go through. If you're a partner, if you have an idea for a great quick start, have a look on that site. There's an email there, or come and talk to me afterwards, and we can have a look at that. So the main differences between a quick start and an AWS Marketplace. So AWS Marketplace allows you, as we've seen, to deploy a single AMI, so a single server. It can deploy a multi-tier stack, as we've just seen a demo of. We can also now, within the Marketplace, deploy API services. So if you want to consume a service as an API, people can now make those available. Whereas I think with Quick Start, we're aiming more at designing a reference architecture for best practices. There's lots of advice on code design and deployment. I talked about that. It also talks really handily about how you can regionalize and configure AMIs across our 16 regions, how you can parameterize CloudFormation, so you can choose whether it's a production stack or a development stack, and best practices for things like naming conventions and so on. So that's pretty much it from me. Obviously, the shameless plugs that I need to put into the last slide before there's any questions. This week, we're running something called the London Innovate Series. First 2 days cover the UK region and also serverless technology. Tomorrow, we've got a set of sessions on collaborative cities, and on Friday, we've got a special focus on healthcare. These are being done in conjunction with Future Cities Catapult. If you're interested, sign up at our URL, london.aws. If you're interested in more from the UK public sector team, we have our own URL. It's quite well hidden, but when you find it, there's lots of good stuff on there about what we're doing, who we're working with, the events we're running, and so on. And I think, as everyone says, at these events, we're hiring. So if you're interested, please come and talk to us. And with that, I'll say, any questions?
Any questions? Any other questions?
And hopefully everyone heard that because the microphone just switched off. So effectively, the roadmap's driven by feedback. If there are particular services you want to see in the London region, please come and speak to me afterwards. If you've got an account manager within AWS already, let them know. Part of our jobs is to feedback customer requirements. I'm not sure if people know this, but more than 90% of our actual roadmap, both in terms of regional availability, but also things like the products and services we develop, are based on customer feedback. So if you want to see us doing new things, if you want particular things being done differently or added more functionality, please let us know.
Any other questions? No? Well, we've got another prize here, Irresistible APIs, forward by Adrian Cockcroft. Do you have a question?
Okay, it's a bit of a geeky question, but for those who can see, there's an equation on my shirt. Anyone knows what it is? Anyone know what it is? It's an equation. I've also got some credits, and that's probably worth some credits, so come and see me afterwards. But yeah, it is an equation. Sorry. Sorry? Nope. 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 Might be considered a complex number, but it's not. Nope. No, far simpler than that. Think sport. Not football. I have no idea if I can put it on screen. Hang on. It should be interesting.
Oh.
Oh. Well, if you get it, you get bonus points. Don't think I can mirror image that one. No. 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 Okay, if I narrow it down further, I suspect people will get this if I say this. It's to do with cricket. Duckworth Lewis. No idea who said that first, however, because there's a light in my eyes. So,
who was that?
Someone can get the book, and I've got a few credits to give out afterwards. So, it's the equation for people who don't know cricket, and I fully appreciate there's probably quite a lot of you that don't. It's effectively, if a game gets affected by rain, the score gets reduced. It's how you calculate the revised score for a team to win. So, yeah, pretty geeky, pretty...
Cryptic is more the word, isn't it?
Yeah.
That was fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Matt. A round of applause for Matt. Really appreciate that.
Thank you. Just to